afternoon. Welcome back to our Sutton business webinar on this sunny afternoon. Today we're talking about a recap really on the funding and HR scenarios that are out there at the moment to help support businesses during this current COVID-19 situation. And we have our usual expert panel. Today we're here, as you know, courtesy of Successful Sutton, the Business Improvement District in Sutton, who are here to give advice and help to businesses within the borough, not just in the town centre, but across the borough, who are looking for help, advice and guidance at this current time. It would be great to hear from as many of you as possible, and this is a really good opportunity if you have been wanting to ask a question to an expert, and maybe you've been trying to get through on a telephone line, or maybe sent an email and not had a response. This is your chance to come here and talk to us directly. I'll tell you a little bit more about how you do that in just a second. First of all, I'd like to ask Patricia Park, who is the manager of Successful Sutton, just to give us a few words of welcome this afternoon.
Hi, and thank you, Catherine. Hello, everyone. So, yes, a lot of things have moved on since the first time we did a finance webinar. So that was a little while ago now. It seems like it's much longer, probably, than it actually is. So, yeah, there have been a number of changes. We thought it was very important for everyone to kind of get an update. We want to hear from people that are actually watching today. So you can ask questions. I want to hear from you really about how things have gone. If you furloughed someone, how did you find the process? Was it relatively quick? Are you still experiencing issues getting some funding and everything else? We do get some links within the local authority, particularly to kind of chase up on anything that is outstanding, or if you feel that you should have had some funding but haven't. Again, that's what the bid is for. So I'd be really interested to hear from everyone, and thank everyone for coming along today, really.
Great, thank you very much, Patricia. So how can you talk to us today? Well, on your little button line on your screen, you'll see that there's a Q&A button that you can use that will enable you to put a question to the panel. If you type into that your question, I can then ask on your behalf. If you want to ask that question in person, you can wave a virtual hand at me. You'll see that little blue hand that would come up, and I would notice that you were waving at me, and that would mean that I can invite you into the conversation to put your question to our panel yourselves, which would be really good. And you can chat to us as well. So there's a chat button, and that's where you can talk to us just with some comments or some feedback. And it's where our panel can also directly interact with you. And if they have some further information that they want to share, they can do it via that chat button. So keep your eye on all of those. Do talk to us today. We want to try and be as much help as we can. So if there's an issue that's on your mind, do use one of those ways to talk to us. We'll also be running our usual polls this afternoon. So every now and again, you'll see one of those pop up, and I'll encourage you at that time to fill in that poll for us. That would be really helpful. So I'm going to introduce you to our panel. Some people are better known than others. First of all, Helen Colquhoun from the HR department in Sutton. Helen's been with us before. There's an awful lot of information out there, and a lot has happened in terms of how we look after our staff, how we handle the furloughing, how we handle holidays, a myriad of questions that have been keeping Helen and her team very busy. So we're delighted that she's able to come back today and give us an update on exactly how that's looking. Also with us today is Emily Harrison. Now, Emily Harrison is from Metrobank in Sutton, and the subject of loans and grants and finance generally is something that Emily is here to talk to us about today. So welcome, Emily. And then Rob Bucundy from Edge Recovery. Rob has been with us before. He is an insolvency practitioner, which isn't what we all want to know about particularly, but what we do want to know about is the reality of how we keep our businesses going, and what are the options, and at what point should we be talking to someone like Rob about weighing up all of the options that are available to us. So Rob can give us that piece of advice too. I want to kick off this afternoon, though, by inviting Maria Geftar, who's from the GLA, to talk to us about the Mayor of London's Pay It Forward campaign, which we have mentioned in previous weeks. But we're delighted that Maria is here. She can tell us exactly how you, as businesses, might be able to help your cash flow by taking part in the Pay It Forward campaign. So welcome, Maria. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Thank you, Catherine, and hi, everyone. So yeah, the Pay It Forward London campaign is a 100% free fundraising platform that you can access on london.gov.uk/pay it forward. It essentially allows businesses in various different sectors, including retail and hospitality, leisure, tourism, creative sectors, to pre-sell their goods and services on a promise to deliver in the future. So it is, as you say, Catherine, very much a way for businesses to manage cash flow by receiving income right now from their loyal customers. So what businesses can do is sign up, set up a campaign, and either accept donations or rewards, offer rewards, whether that's sort of a discount on a meal or discounted tickets to an event, to for a round of drinks at your local pub, whatever it is. Sort of Londoners can purchase those rewards and chip in to support the businesses they love and trust in their community. So we've seen, since we launched the platform on Monday, 20th of April, we've seen quite a lot of businesses sign up. I'll just get that data now. So since Monday, 20th of April, we've seen just under 800 businesses sign up. Of those, 160 have gone live as campaigns that are actively raising, and they've raised over £500,000 already, which is fantastic. And they've done so.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just showing, I think I'm showing, if everyone can tell me that they can see the screen. I'm just sharing the screen, actually, Maria, that shows some of those campaigns that are live at the moment, just to give people an idea.
Great. Yeah. So you'll see there's quite a range of different businesses on there, from music venues to kind of coffee shops and restaurants. And we've seen over 11,000 Londoners support these campaigns already. So there's definitely kind of a need from businesses and the will and the goodwill from Londoners to support them during this time.
Am I right in saying that through this campaign, there is no cost to doing this? This is part of the Mayor of London's support, in that this has been set up at no cost. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's delivered in collaboration with Crowdfunder, who are hosting the platform, and they have waived all their usual transaction costs and fees. So it is absolutely 100% free to set up a campaign.
And how easy is it to do?
Well, it's you go through a few steps, and it is generally quite easy. But what we do encourage businesses to do is just to spend some time thinking through their campaign. Sort of whether that's doing a personal video call out, just to kind of bring it to life a little bit, and kind of do that direct outreach to your loyal customers, as well as sort of talk about the vision of your business and sort of how you're looking to spend the money that Londoners pledge, as well as including kind of some photos, including your neighborhood and your postcode and your title also really helps. So that makes it much easier to search for on the website.
And you can, I'm just sharing again, so you can actually nominate a business. I think that's a really important point to make. If you know a business that you want to try and support, you can go through a nomination process. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We very much encourage people to nominate businesses in their local community, and we ourselves and the Crowdfunder team will reach out to those businesses to try to help them get set up on the platform.
Okay, that's great. Rob, I know that you have a question around this that I think is quite relevant. Can I come to you and just ask you to pose that question?
Yes, thank you, Catherine. The question was, I mean, obviously I'm looking at this from, I suppose, disaster scenario, but if people are paying and they're putting money up front, etc., for items, is there a risk that people are going to lose their money? Is there going to be an element there that if they're looking for future goods or future supply, whether that supply doesn't happen, what's the impact of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I think so. I think it's crucial to differentiate the difference between crowdfunding and traditionally purchasing goods and services through online shopping, where normal consumer laws apply. In crowdfunding, you're essentially supporting a cause that you care about, with the risk built in that it might not happen, or sort of that project might not go forward. It's so that people aren't really going on here to do their online shopping this way. You know, people are going because they care about their local business. They want to support them through this difficult time, and you know, sort of at the same time, you know, on the one hand, they're giving a donation to a cause they care about, whilst at the same time, you know, buying something that they could potentially redeem in the future. And as I say, there are appropriate disclaimers in place to warn people of that risk.
I think that sort of supporting locally, shop locally is definitely a theme that's coming out through this COVID-19 scenario. Patricia, do you want to just pick up on that in terms of what you're seeing from a business community perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's more from a resident perspective, to be honest. They're keen to try and support the local businesses and want to know the best way in order to do that. And there's been obviously an uptake in people that are buying gift vouchers and things for future use, which is great. But I think this is a really good initiative for the residents, particularly because we have seen a lot of uptick in people wanting to do this kind of thing, particularly across social media. So giving them a platform in order to enable them to do it, I think is a good option. I think Rob's right. I think there was always the initial concern before all the information came out that maybe, you know, you're putting money towards something, but that business unfortunately might not come and reopen when the lockdown comes to an end. But I think now we've got some clarity over what this actually means. I think there's going to be more people inclined to actually give it as much support possible locally, and also businesses. I think it's a great opportunity for them, you know, to see what happens. I mean, what have they got to lose really at the minute? It's, you know, it's another opportunity for them to raise some funding.
And I know on the call last week when we were talking, you know, about how businesses are surviving, you know, many of them are, you know, really and quite rightly, you know, playing on the customer loyalty and customer service. And many of us, you know, would want to be able to support our local hairdresser at a time like this. And if we could do that by buying a voucher, which hopefully we would be able to redeem in the future, I don't guess any of us would be that, you know, if the business didn't survive, that would be terrible. But it would be a way of trying to help them to survive in the interim. So I think that customer loyalty element. I think, Maria, there are some changes to the site in terms of, I think, you know, we're here in Sutton, and what we're trying to do through these webinars is to encourage that community feel. And actually, wouldn't it be great if we could have lots of Sutton businesses on this site so that you could go in and think, right, okay, how can I support my local high street? And I think there's some changes afoot in terms of the functionality.
Not that many, no. You can, oh, right, yes. There will be some changes in functionality to be able to search by borough and via, you know, sort of a map and location. So that will help businesses who, you know, just come onto the platform to browse through, you know, sort of any businesses in their local area will be able to see. But I very much, you know, sort of the majority, I just think it's worth saying the majority of people that come onto the platform to pledge funds actually come from the networks that businesses reach out to directly. You know, it's usually through a specific campaign. And so we very much encourage kind of businesses who want to set up a campaign or have set up a campaign to reach out to their customer bases, whether that's through social media or any existing newsletters that they have.
So maybe we can launch a challenge this morning. Who's going to be the first Sutton business to go on this portal, launch a campaign? And I'm sure whoever is first, I'm sure Patricia will be delighted to shout about on the Successful Sutton Bid social media pages and her e-bulletins, etc. And then maybe we can actually get, you know, a good group of people all working together to support the local Sutton High Streets. Thank you very much, Maria, for giving us that update. I know that you have a very busy schedule, so I'm going to allow you to leave us right now. Obviously, if it doesn't stop anybody out there wanting to ask any questions or having further clarification, you can still do that. And we can ask Maria back, or we can answer the questions via our follow-up emails after. So for now, Maria, thanks very much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So now I'm going to go to come over to Helen and ask for an update, really, Helen, from your perspective. Really busy times. No doubt your phone doesn't stop ringing, but what are the key things that you want to bring forward as an update of where we're at currently from an HR perspective?
Thanks, Catherine. So most people by now who have put some staff on furlough will, of course, have tried to access the coronavirus job retention scheme. That's where you can claim back up to 80% to a maximum of £2,500 of your employees' salaries, subject to you having agreed with them that that's what you're going to do. The claims went through, the ones that when the system went live, the claims went through and people have been being paid out. So a shout out to HMRC there, who have done a massively brilliant job, like many of us, doing it from their bedrooms, dining room tables and all sorts. So that's really, really good news for employers. It's meant that employers haven't had to lay staff off or make them redundant initially, but of course now people's attention is turning to whether they do need to make those people redundant. So they're thinking ahead to when the scheme closes, which at the moment it's open until the end of June. So employers are thinking ahead, and I encourage employers to do this, as to whether they will be bringing people back to work. We'll obviously know more after Sunday's announcement as to which businesses can start to do more or reopen. So number one, planning for those who are reopening for return to work, and number two, planning for those who do know that they're going to have to make some changes within their business because their business is either not going to make it, or it's going to shrink in size, or they're going to have to think about providing different types of services and need different types of employees, different skill sets. Really encourage people to think about how they're going to start the consultation process, which they can do whilst employees are on furlough, and also thinking about holidays. So whether you want your employees to take some holiday whilst they're on furlough as well. So hopefully if you're going to bring them back when the scheme does close, that you won't have such a massive amount of holiday for them to take throughout the rest of the year, or carry over to next year.
So I know we don't know what is going to be announced on Sunday. We're all trying to second guess. But clearly the issue of whether furloughing is going to continue is going to be a key factor for many businesses in terms of making those decisions. Is there any rumours? I know there's been some leaked information that's been touted around in the press, but is there any sort of inside info that you've got on this?
So I don't have any inside info that anyone else doesn't have access to, but of course I might have read up been more interested to read up on stuff than some people. So we're expecting that next week we'll get an update regarding the ongoing scheme, the job retention scheme, or the furlough scheme as people are calling it. We need to have that update because larger employers will need a longer consultation period. So that's why we're expecting there to be another announcement by the end of next week. So also I'm reading that the scheme is to be wound down rather than just closed. Again, I don't know if that's going to be true, but I suspect it could be true, that either it would remain open for some businesses, those that can't reopen yet, or that it will wind down in terms of the amount. So maybe not 80%, it might go down to 60%, for example, that employees would be paid, and the cap might decrease. And lastly, also that there might be some relaxation of the rules around furlough, where you cannot work for your employer if you're on furlough. The HR department and others have been campaigning for that. We've had so many questions from employers saying, so I furloughed my employees, but can I just ask them to answer some emails? Can I just ask them to help with some forward planning? Can I just ask them? And the answer is no, you can't. But of course they can go and work with somebody else, which seems rather odd, doesn't it? But there had to be some rules, and I understand that.
Hugely frustrating though, isn't it? When there's jobs that you need those people to do, and yet they can go off and do it for someone else and be paid, and yet they can't do it for the business that they want to remain loyal to. But I understand, like you, that there had to be a system and a process, and it wasn't ever going to be perfect. But hats off to them for what they've done so far. But that would be great, wouldn't it, if we did find out that there was something around that. And just to pause for a moment, because we've just launched our usual confidence survey. As you know, we ask this every time. We're tracking how confident you are all feeling. It was good news last week, or even on Tuesday, when we did this, because we found out that the confidence levels had grown quite a lot from when we first ran this survey. So when it all kicked off, we were all very uncertain. Now, because of all of this intervention and help and support, it seems that people are feeling more confident. I'm guessing that depending on what happens next week, that may or may not make a difference to confidence, because in a way we're in a bit of a bubble that we've all got a bit used to this, and at some point reality is going to kick in and we all have to get back to life into some sort of new normal. And what does that mean for our businesses? Helen, just sort of just picking up on that redundancy scenario, if they didn't extend furlough, what you're really saying is that we're coming towards the middle of May. If you weren't intending to take your staff forward in employment beyond furlough, you would have to start consulting around about now, presumably. Is that...
So larger businesses who are going to make more than 20 redundancies, or proposing to make more than 20, have at least a 30-day consultation period. Some would be 45. But for those of us in smaller businesses where we're just making a handful of people redundant, there isn't such a rush to get that done, because we can have a shorter consultation period. There's no set amount of time. We normally recommend about 2 weeks, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So it's definitely time to start planning for those redundancy consultations, because of course you've also got to think about the notice period that people are owed. So that could be something that you could factor in during the furlough period, or on from there.
Yeah, okay, that's great, thank you. I'm going to come to you, Emily, for an update on all of the C bills, B bills, and anything else, a bill, it would seem.
Yeah.
Your access. Tell us about how you found that as Metro Bank. I think at the moment you're not able to do B bills, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So we actually applied yesterday for our accreditation. You have to go for accreditation to the BBB. So we're in the process of sorting all the back end stuff. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to offer that at some point next week, fingers crossed, as long as everything goes to plan. So yeah, I mean, obviously so much has changed and things are changing nearly every week, really. But now Bibbles has launched as of Monday. So just to give you a bit of an update around what that looks like and how that's sort of impacted Sibbles as well, because as a consequence of Bibbles launching, Sibbles has now changed as well. So Bibbles is a minimum of £2,000 up to £50,000 that SMEs can apply for.
I'm just going to interrupt you because I'm conscious that we're talking in acronyms that might not mean anything to anybody else.
Sorry, yes.
Bibbles is
the bounce back loan.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So Bibbles is the bounce back loan.
Yeah.
Now so that's been launched for SMEs, and what they're classing as SMEs is anyone with under 250 employees. And that's of an amount of between £2,000 and up to £50,000, or 25% of your turnover. Now, what that means is because they've brought it up to 50,000, that Sibbles, which was from 25,000, has now gone up to £50,001. So what I would say is, if you are in the process of going through a Sibbles application with your bank, and it's under the 50,000, I would speak to your bank to see whether they are accredited with the bounce back loan scheme, and if they are, how that affects you, because you are within your right. If you want to change over to the bounce back loan, you are able to do that.
Can I ask whether you're able to do that once you've had your C-bills loan? So let's say
if your Sibbles loan has now been drawn and you have the money, you can't unfortunately apply for the bounce back loan. So you can have, it's one or the other. You're unable to apply for both, unfortunately. But if you're in the process and the money hasn't been drawn yet, I would definitely speak to your bank to see whether that's an option as to whether you can switch over if they're accredited and if they're able to do that. The interest rate for the bounce back loan differs to Sibbles. So with the Sibbles loan, it varied bank by bank. So each bank had their own rate that they provided. But with the bounce back loan, it's a flat rate of 2.5%. So that's fixed, and that's across all banks. So they'll all be offering the same interest rate on that. So, I mean, what I would say is if you're interested in finding out more information on it, if you just go to the Business Bank website, there's loads of information on there. There'll be loads of information on the Gov website as well. And the application process is really sort of simple and straightforward. So you can first of all go to the website to find out which lenders are currently accredited. As I said, there are new lenders going on there every day, so make sure that that you're sort of regularly checking if your bank isn't yet on there. And then you would just go on. Firstly, you would apply to your own bank, I would suggest. So if you've got a business account, go to your own bank first if they are an accredited lender. And there'll then be an application form online. And I think it's on average about 7 questions. It's not much at all. And you're able to self-certify those answers yourself. And it will be things like, you need to confirm that your business has been impacted by COVID-19, that you weren't in financial difficulty before COVID, that you're a UK trading business, that you don't have a Sybil's loan. So things like that will be the type of questions they'll ask. And then obviously the banks will have to undergo their own sort of checks and due diligence. And if that's all okay, the lender will then make a decision. And I think most banks are sort of offering the money within a few days. So it is a really quick turnaround once they have all the information.
That's great. Patricia, can I just bring you in? Because I think you had a question related directly to how many loans. Yeah.
It was just mainly because obviously I think I certainly have had an understanding from businesses that they've had a problem trying to obtain a loan. They found the process quite challenging, not necessarily saying with Metro Bank, but certainly even with their own banks, it's been proving a bit difficult. How many loans, in terms of yourselves at Metro Bank, how many loans have you found on the CBIL scheme? Obviously, BBIL's to come, but on the CBIL scheme, how many loans have you managed to approve, do you think, since they first started? Have you seen quite an uptake?
I'm not sure on the exact numbers, but I know that there are definitely businesses that we're helping. I think it's been difficult because there's a lot of, the government have announced that these loans are coming out, and the banks are trying desperately to work as quickly as possible to come up with all the procedures and processes that obviously we need to put in place ourselves. But no, I would say, and I think it goes for all banks, that we are trying to process as many applications as quickly as possible, and just looking at everything on a case by case basis. So, looking at, how the business was trading before COVID, if they were doing well before COVID, then it's more than likely and hopefully that they'll do well once COVID sorts itself out. So I think it is difficult, but we are trying to do as best we can, and we're just having to look at each case on a case by case basis, because obviously every business is different, everyone's in a different situation, and just looking at how the business, what plans they've got in place once this is all over. As someone was saying before, are they changing the way that they work, or what sort of plans do they have once this is over?
Okay, that's great.
Sorry, I just wanted to one thing is there any commonality, sort of from your perspective, any advice you could give businesses that are coming for these loans as to what information you think would give them an advantage in trying to obtain one? I.e., if they're coming to see and they're saying, we would like a loan, what sort of information does your, specifically Metro Bank, what sort of information do you want to see from them in order to put that loan forward?
So again, that has changed as well. Originally we were asking, to look at your financials, and a lot of businesses may not have had those, or they had to go to their accountants, but obviously their accountants are really busy, so it has taken ages to get all that information. So that's not necessarily something that we are asking for now. But what I would say is, if you do have them, or they are easily accessible and your accountant can send them over, I would say that would definitely help support your application. Just because obviously if we can see your financials and we can see that you were doing well pre-COVID, then that will make it a lot easier. But as I say, and obviously I'm only speaking for Metro Bank at the moment because I don't know what the other banks are asking for. But yeah, it's the application form, and then your financials, and potentially bank statements, if you're not banking with the bank that you've gone to. But yeah, so at the moment we're not saying that is not an essential that we need, but if you have them and they're easily accessible, I would say that would definitely help support your application.
So as a general sort of overview then, the message really is that things have changed. So whereby looked at them in the early days, albeit only a few weeks ago, things have moved on, changed slightly. It sounds like they've become a little bit more relaxed, and maybe it's worth revisiting it. And you don't just have to get your own bank. You could go to anywhere, and if you go, I put the British Bank's website onto the chat. You can go anywhere. There's a number of different providers that can do this service. Just from Metro Bank's point of view, I know this came up when we were doing a webinar somewhere else with a Metro Bank. Now you're open, yes, you've got more people sat in the branch, obviously practicing the correct social distancing. So there's a message there around, not everybody wants to deal with it over the phone. So presumably, you've got advisors that are you booking appointments? Is it a walk-in service? How are you operating that?
So we're still open. So we're 10 till 4 Monday to Friday. So we're not open at the weekends anymore, and that's a massive thing for Metro Bank. So I never thought I'd see the day where we were closed at the weekend. So it is a walk-in service. We're not really doing any appointments, but I mean, if someone had a specific thing that they needed to come in and talk about and they could only come in at a set time, then obviously we would look to accommodate that for them. But we have advisors in each of our store that can deal with both personal and business related queries. We've also got our local business managers in, and there'll be at least one, if not two, in every store. So for any business customers, if they're not happy to deal with them over the phone or over a Zoom chat, then obviously, yes, they are more than welcome to come into store. But we have social distancing measures in store as well. So we've got, everyone needs to make sure that they're at least 2 meters. We've got markers on the floor to make sure when people are queuing that they're queuing at least 2 meters apart. Unfortunately, we can only let a certain amount of people into the store at any one point, just to make sure it's not too overcrowded. You're sitting at one of our customer service desks, and we make sure that the chair is at least 2 meters apart, and then that we've got screens as well at the teller lines and also at the desks.
Right.
So we're trying to do everything we can to make sure we can keep open, basically.
Lovely. I'm going to come to Rob because we've been talking about all the help that's out there. The reality is that all that help may not still be enough for some businesses. And I know we touched upon this in an earlier webinar. What are you finding now, and what is sort of your current advice that you're giving to people about where we are currently with this scenario?
Yes, thank you, Catherine. And listening very carefully to what everybody else has actually been saying, which is some very good advice. The key things that you're going to actually look at right now and going forward, and the thing that we've been telling everybody, is cash. It's all about cash. There are loans, there's opportunities. People don't necessarily want to take on more debt because they're concerned about it after the year. In those instances, I would actually say get as much cash as you can now, apply for the loans, even if you don't use them. So actually get the money, because what we don't know right now is how long this is going to go on for. We don't know which businesses are going to actually be impacted. We don't know which ones are coming back, when they're coming back. The rumours are that social distancing will still be in place at Christmas. Restaurants won't open till November properly. And you're in a situation at the moment where you've got to look at your future, look at your plans and say, well, if I only have 50% turnover, so if we have social distancing measures in place, you might actually find, if you have, for example, a restaurant business, that you can only have 50% of your people actually coming in because the tables have to be spread further apart. So there's the practicalities of when you're bringing this back, what is your business going to look like? Helen made some very good points about staffing. You know, furlough is going to come to an end at some point. The government's already told us that it is unsustainable to keep this going at the level it is. And therefore they will have to actually reduce it, cancel it, do something. But there'll be businesses that will gradually get back into the usual aspects. And you don't know yet which businesses those are going to be. So what I would say is get the cash. It's interest free, capital repayment free for the first 12 months. Sit on it, put it into a bank account, leave it in a segregated account that you don't have to actually touch it. And if you don't need it, great, give it back. But if you don't take it and you don't take as much as you can right now, there's a real danger that in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that you're actually going to run out of cash when you suddenly find that you still have to pay all of your bills, your rent, your rates, and everything else that goes with it, your deferred amounts that are going to suddenly become payable. And if you thought, well, actually, I didn't really get the opportunity to get as much money, and then you go back to your bank or lender and say, oh, by the way, now I'm in real trouble and I need to actually get some money. Again, I'm not talking on behalf of the banks, they'll make their own decisions. But experience is that companies in trouble are not going to necessarily be receiving the same favor as companies that right now can demonstrate that they were good and that they will be good. This is about survival. This is about keeping the business going, and it's about having the resources to enable you to do it, even if it's buying raw materials that, if you have a business where the materials are wasting, they're becoming obsolete, they're becoming things that actually effectively you're going to have to throw away and replace. Your working capital needs to be there. You need to have the functionality. So I would say, even if you don't use it and you don't want it and you don't like having the debt, a bit of discipline, get the money, squirrel it away, use it if you have to use it. And if you find that you have actually done really well, and congratulations, and you've come out of the other side and your business is now surviving and going, give it back, pay it back. It is a loan. This is a loan, not a grant. So it is there. Do not just take the money and go and spend it. Use the money wisely, use cash wisely. So that is pretty much what we're actually telling people at the moment. Those are the messages that we're saying about survival. Our experience is that more businesses fail as a result of not having the available working capital cash to pay for things when they are starting to grow.
Yeah.
Use Helen's words quite wisely about considering your staff. They don't all have to come back to work on one day. You don't have to suddenly get the message on Sunday saying business is opening on Monday. Thanks very much. 100% of the staff costs hit your business. Furlough is there till the end of June already, and unless they change it, bring them back bit by bit. Which ones are essential? Get the turnover up, give them notice. And if you look and think, well, actually restructuring means change it, then change it now and use the opportunity with the furlough to actually not have to end up having to spend another month, 2 months, 3 months notice pay as top of the redundancy that you're going to have to pay. The law hasn't changed. You still have to abide your entire law on employee elements. With Helen be able to actually advise on all of those elements, but that is, you still have to abide by it.
And I guess the other message, which is actually been put into the chat to all of us, someone asking around, the situation, particularly for leisure venues, concert halls, cinemas, theatres. They might be allowed to reopen, but I guess they don't have to. And there is something around for businesses, just because the government says you can now reopen, there is an element of, I guess you would be advising Rob to think about whether now is the right time to open from a business perspective, or whether they need to think, take their time to do that.
Yes, I mean, I would like to think that certainly over the last month or month and a half, that people have been considering this already in their business. I believe that, there's no obligation on you ever to actually reopen. You don't have to. It has to be right for you. So planning now will be vital, because if we are seeing that the measures on Sunday are that you can reopen, but you have restrictions, and you might generate only 50% of your turnover, there's a real risk that actually you would lose more money by opening than if you actually stayed closed. But also bear in mind that if furlough comes to an end fairly suddenly, they're talking about not making it a cliff edge. I think was Sunny Runak's view. Rishi Sunak. He basically he's trying to manage this down so that it does end up being the point where you can bring back partly. But I'm not sure that the pure thoughts of 100% of your costs and 50% of your turnover is a good business concept, and shrinking to allow for the growth again might be a better plan.
So I want to bring Helen back in, because that raises a question that we've asked in our business, which is around furloughing and unfurloughing. Where are we at with that currently? What can you do if next week we were told we could open and we thought, well, okay, we'll unfurlough somebody, and then we think, oh no, actually that was the wrong decision? Can you then put them back on furlough until the end of June?
Yeah, absolutely. So as long as they've been on furlough leave for at least 3 weeks, then you'll be able to bring them back if you want to and still make your claim, or you may have made your claim already. And then if you think, well, actually that was a wrong decision, or something else has changed, or I want to swap people around, so I want to have some sort of rota system, then that's fine. You can furlough and unfurlough and furlough and unfurlough people. You're going to just need to communicate that really carefully with people so that they know what they're doing, nobody's confused. And also there will be some people, of course, who are on furlough who have childcare issues, depending on what happens with all the nurseries and the schools, of course. Patricia's nodding, she knows. And people will have other responsibilities. Some people may have gone and sought another temporary role, so they'll need to make arrangements with that other role to cease that. So yeah, communication will be key on that.
So there's no restrictions in that you could bring someone back, say, next week for 3 days, and then actually say, actually, I don't need you the following week, so I'm going to put you back on furlough. Could you then take them off again for 3 days the following week?
Yes, yeah. So you could have a 3-week cycle where you furlough, unfurlough, furlough and unfurlough. And of course, the other thing that people can take advantage of is asking their staff to take holiday during the furlough period. So that will save you money both now, because you can be claiming that 80% still, and you just have to top up to their 100% of their salary. So if you have enough cash to do that, not every business will be able to, but if you've got enough cash to do that, I'd recommend that you give people notice that you would like them to take holiday while they're on furlough, and you must give them twice the amount of notice for the amount of leave you want them to take. So if you want them to take a week, you give them 2 weeks notice. So there's plenty of time to do that throughout May and June while they're on furlough.
And what if the employee said, actually, that's all very well, but I've got nowhere to go. So, I don't want to take my 2 weeks holiday before the end of June that you're suggesting. Where does that leave you?
Well, as an employer, whether we have the furlough scheme or not, we have the right to tell people when we want them to take holiday. In the main, most employers don't take advantage of that right. We might have a close down period at Christmas. Some companies have a close down period in the summer, but generally we allow our staff to choose when they want to take their holiday within certain rules. But we are allowed to tell them when to take holiday. There's nothing in the legislation for the coronavirus job retention scheme that says that you can do that, but normal legislation says that you can. So that's fine, as long as you're paying them the right amount of money.
Is that a change to contract? Do you have to go through a contract change to do that?
No.
Okay, so it's fairly straightforward. It's sort of a bit of common sense and the usual that you would do as a good employer anyway, in terms of communicating and
good communication is going to be key here, isn't it? Just talking to those people and telling them why it's important that you ask them, and acknowledging that it's not the most fun time to be taking holiday. And particularly useful, I think, if you've got some staff who are furloughed and some who aren't, explaining why you might be treating those two people differently. And I think it's only fair that if somebody's getting paid 80% of their money, of their salary to sit at home and not work, and some people are getting paid 80% or even 100% to do lots of work, it might be nice that those people who are on that 80% to do nothing, take their holiday, and give those people a chance when they come back to work, the other people a chance to take their leave then.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Patricia, I'm going to come to you now, because Rob picked up on the sort of the business case planning scenario around, the practicalities. Is it the right thing to open? And a lot of that will be down to what the local authority, I guess, predominantly, but hopefully in consultation with a BID or any other organisation in the high street, might be thinking in terms of, traffic flows. How is social distancing going to be managed? What impact is that going to have on footfall into a particular area? Have you got any thoughts on that? Do you know what Sutton are thinking about in terms of how that might look?
No. No is the short answer. I think obviously that everyone is very under it at the moment, screwing away with lots of different information. There's a lot of information being shared one borough to another. Certainly there is from bid to bid. As bids collectively, we're all considering what we can do to add value to any form of delivery within town centres. And I think predominantly the idea from our perspective is looking at the key things that are going to make that bit of difference. So certainly when you look at footfall, you want to make sure your town centre is going to be safe. I think residents are kind of looking at the fact that they want their town centre to be clean, is the one thing. I think that was a key thing. And also, I think, just touching on something Helen said earlier on, we're talking a lot about furloughing stuff, but I think we have, in the borough alone at the moment, there's a lot of people that have lost their jobs. So we do have quite a high level of unemployment. So I think recruitment has to be quite high up there, and particularly at a local level. Because when you're looking at a business that you have now, and some of your staff say we're coming from North London, from West London via public transport, how likely is it that they're going to want to travel again by public transport once this lockdown kind of eases? So things like that as well, we're kind of focusing on, as well as internal measures. So some of our larger stores have obviously got huge departments dealing with facilities and providing them with screens and masks and goodness knows what else. For our independents, they don't have that luxury. So we're looking very much at pulling together some ideas on how we can support those businesses with the changes to any kind of internal structures that they need to do. Certainly social distance marking internally and externally as well, and how we start steadily looking at that prime thing, particularly for retail, which is footfall. How do we do that? It's certainly, I think Rob was quite right. I don't foresee us being allowed to have major events or any activities that drive a large number of crowds to our town centre for a good few months, at least until Christmas, if then. So how do we support businesses, particularly with that mixed footfall? So the mixed physical and the mixed virtual footfall, driving people to their websites, communication, social media, and that kind of thing, which I think is also really important moving forward as well now. So there are a number of areas. We are talking to businesses about those. We are going to be launching another survey after Sunday's announcement, because I want to see what people's initial thoughts are. And certainly, I think one thing that has highlighted today is how confident businesses are feeling about the changes they're going to need to implement, and whether it's actually worth, as Rob said, opening now or waiting for everything to get to a much more level of normal than it will be for those first few months, where everyone's kind of scrabbling around trying to get their doors open again, trying to understand what members of the public are doing and their customers want. I think it is a time for kind of sitting back and going, do we need to do this? Do we need to open these doors now?
It's not a knee-jerk reaction.
No, exactly. I mean,
carefully to see if it's the right time, and also, I guess, to watch what's going on around you to see how other people are reacting.
I think it's a cautious reopening. I would like to call it a cautious reopening, and just making sure that your staff levels are the ones that you need in order to do things. I mean, certainly looking at stock levels, looking at whether you need to have that much stock on display is another issue as well, because you obviously got to think about social distancing in store. I mean, we have stores that are just, you know, loads of stuff in store, which is great.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to distance people 2 meters apart, having that much stock on a floor can prove a real challenge when you're trying to socially distance. So it's also looking at what, you know, what that now looks like for you. So it can't be knee jerk. It has to be really planned out. And I think we're here to try and support as best we can.
And as a bid, is it perhaps an option for the bid to be looking at? I know, you know, sourcing of PPE, sourcing of I think they're called sneeze screens, which go up, you know, at a checkout point. Is there some way that successful Sutton could maybe be looking at buying, you know, sourcing and buying and distributing? Obviously not for free, businesses would have to pay for it, but maybe there's some way that it could be a collaborative approach to bulk buying what businesses might need, and then, you know, because I guess suddenly, if not already, but suddenly everyone's going to be going back online thinking, right, I can reopen, but I now need X, Y, and Z in terms of equipment, and that's all going to go in short supply again, and then you aren't going to be able to open. So
exactly that. And I think what we're trying to do at the moment is understand who can provide these things locally, and particularly contractors, you know, handymen that can come and fit these screens to a spec. We're trying to draw together a list at the minute of a kind of a business checklist, particularly around social distancing, health and safety, and say, have you done these things? Have you taken these measures? Very difficult to do until we know what the government guidelines are going to be. And as we know, that is ever changing. We're being very reactive at the moment, which is never great. You kind of want to have this stuff prepared, but you can't until you hear from them. But there are things that we can resource now. So we are communicating with a lot of the local contractors at the moment to kind of look at a group level discount scenario for smaller businesses that want to implement stuff. PPE provision as well, particularly for staff members and everybody else. And we have actually just resourced for external stenciling, which will go outside of stores to help manage queues in a more uniform way. Just so it looks a bit better than the hideous tape that we have to use at the minute. So
there's definitely something around the look and feel and giving confidence. You know, you don't really want to be going down a high street. Down a high street that looks like a crime scene with loads of black and yellow tape.
Oh, it looks horrendous.
Make it a pleasant experience, isn't it? And I've seen lots of examples of how that can be done more sympathetically, which would be good. Helen, I'm just going to bring you in because I know you've put into the chat you've got a couple of clients that can supply PPE.
Yeah, we've got 2 clients who advised me that they've got stock available. One is local on the Purley Way, and one is in the Wallingham area. So I can send details round of those. They've definitely got face masks and hand sanitizer, for example, which I know has been difficult to get hold of.
Yeah, I know someone on a call earlier this morning was saying that actually that seems very hard to get hand sanitizer at the moment. Seems to have gone back on the difficult list. So that's really good to know. Just coming back for sort of a final few words from everyone, really, as a sort of as we approach the end of this. Coming back to you, Emily, obviously you're already on the high street and you are open, and you've obviously had to put in all these measures. As the high street gets busier, there's going to be, I guess, other challenges. But what's the sort of message really from Metro Bank in terms of, you know, I guess we have only just really spoken about loans, but there must be other financial support packages and such like that people could be coming to talk to you about?
Yeah, I mean, I just think the main thing for everyone is just communication. I just think that's just so important to just, you know, if you are struggling or you need some help, just to talk to, you know, your bank, your accountant if you have one, you know, and just keep communicating, especially and not just with, you know, the banks and the accountants, but also, you know, with your customers, with your suppliers, and just keep talking. But yeah, I mean, you know, we are looking at loads of different stuff for customers. So, you know, if people are struggling or, you know, they need help, they've got an overdraft and they're struggling to pay it back, then just talk to your bank, go and talk to them, because they will be able to offer you support. So I just think that's the most important thing, is just for everyone to just keep talking and just make sure you're communicating.
And I know we've discussed on past webinars, but we know that HMRC are being very accommodating. You know, I think there's been a corporation tax. You've got a delay on that. You don't have to pay that for times. So there's lots of things. And I think the message coming from all those people are
Yeah.
talk to us, because there is help that can be given. So
yeah, and that's exactly it. There are so many government schemes out there that can help people. So I think if just speak. If, as I said, if you've got an account, speak to them, because they'll be able to help advise you. Just keep communicating.
just a reminder that you're open from 10 to 4 Monday to Friday. Presumably at some point that might be reviewed as we come out of lockdown, and you might be looking to extend your opening hours. So weekend opening.
Yeah, I think we're looking. Yeah, so I think what we're looking at doing is when lockdown eases, to potentially go back to the 7 days, maybe keep the same hours to start with, and then I'm sure as it sort of eases, we'll increase the opening hours again. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for that, Emily. Coming to you, Rob, for sort of some final thoughts. I guess the top 3 things people should be doing at the moment, maybe.
Okay, top 3. Plan for the unexpected. Basically, that is probably number 1. You have no idea what's going to be happening, but plan for it anyway. Preserve your cash, because that is going to be key to survival. And third one, community. Community is going to be key. It's going to be key around high streets, locality. People are going to retrench back into smaller groups, and you will attract more local custom if everybody sees that you are all acting locally. I think community is going to be probably both financially and socially very, very key to coming out of this, with as fewer scars as possible.
Right. So, as a business, continue to communicate with your customers. I guess reach out locally in a way maybe that you wouldn't have done before, to try and encourage that customer loyalty locally.
Absolutely. Yeah, we as a business, etc., we've embraced new ideas, new ways, etc. We've spent the last month and a half out there making sure that we're in contact with as many people as possible. We've gone over social media channels. We've gone through websites, etc., just to make sure that everybody's still aware that we're still there and we're still existing, and that everything is going to come out the other side and still be operational.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Rob. Coming to you, Helen. Final thoughts from you?
So start planning. So whether that's planning for reopening, when that might be and what that might look like. What do you need to do to communicate with your teams? What do you need to do to plan your social distancing and other safety measures? What do you need to do? Things do you need to put in place? And if you think you're going to have to downsize, then start planning and looking at those redundancies and what they will look like. Talk to somebody like me about how you communicate that and how you consult with your employees, and utilise that holiday entitlement, so you use up some of that entitlement and don't give yourself something else to pay for later on in the year or even next year.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much. Patricia, just coming back to you. I guess, in many ways, ironically, this could be in the long, medium, short term, I don't know, but, going back to supporting your high street, pre-COVID-19, high streets were struggling, retail was struggling, and then clearly this is going to be an even bigger struggle now, but there is maybe a light at the end of the tunnel that encouraging people to shop locally again and support their local community is certainly positive. We've heard in the news this morning about the closure of Debenhams. I think Sutton is not one of those closures.
No, it's not.
So that is good news. So I guess final words from you on that in terms of looking ahead to the future.
I think Rob touched on it. I think I very much view, and I think that the general consensus is that it is going to be very community focused. I think we're very lucky. Our high street sits in quite a large residential built up area. So from either side, people walk to access our high street continuously, and that's generally where our customer base comes from. So really, it's just going to be coming in dribs and drabs. Don't expect that large footfall we get in the summer, which everybody does. It's nice weather, everybody comes out. I think from a business perspective, you have to look at it and say, well, we know we're not going to get that many in terms of footfall physically. And as I said earlier, I think the important thing for every business really is to look at their online, particularly independents. Look at your online offering. If you can do stuff online, do it, even if it's just the odd offer every now and again. But it encourages people, while they're not going to come to you physically, they can at least shop with you in a different way. But yeah, community is the big thing. I think everyone's come a bit closer together because of this, and it'll be good to harness that for the town centre particularly.
Great, that's wonderful. So we are at the end of our time this afternoon, and now we're back in a week. Next Thursday. Now, next Thursday we could all be in a very different place. It feels like we're sort of coming out of the end of a phase one, and we're all waiting to hear what the government says on Sunday. So next week we will be trying to grapple with what the new normal might look like, how as businesses we might all be looking to move forward, and what advice is there out there for those of you that have got questions. So do make a note in your diaries at 2 o'clock next Thursday. And I'm hoping you'll all have lots of questions that you'll be able to put to our panelists. So in the meantime, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the bank holiday weekend, an extra day to be at home. Make the most of that. And look forward to seeing you all next Thursday. Stay well. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.